Welcome to the Docket. I'm your host, Corey Snow. This is episode 33. In December 2024, the Committee on Ethics of the U.S. House of Representatives released a report on its investigation of former Congressman Matt Gaetz, looking into allegations of sexual misconduct, drug use, statutory rape, and violations of House rules, as well as other allegations. This is an audio presentation of that committee report. Because the full duration of the recording is around 90 minutes, it has been broken up into 4 episodes, each one being a recording of one major section of the report. All episodes were published together. This episode is a recording of Section 5, Findings, Section 6, Conclusion, Section 7, Statement under House Rules, and Section 8, Views of the Dissenting Committee Members. 5. Findings. A. The committee found Representative Gaetz violated state laws related to sexual misconduct. 1. The committee did not find that Representative Gaetz violated federal sex trafficking laws. The committee did not obtain substantial evidence that Representative Gaetz violated federal sex trafficking laws. Transportation of an individual for purposes of commercial sex could violate such laws if the individual was a minor or if the sexual activity occurred through force, fraud, or coercion. Representative Gaetz was alleged in news reports to have paid a minor to engage in sexual activity and travel with him on a trip to the Bahamas in September 2018. However, the youngest person who traveled with him and his associates was 18 years old at the time of the trip. Further, she and the other women who attended the Bahamas trip did not recall being paid for sexual activity on that occasion. One woman testified that she was not paid for sex on the trip, although she did have sex with Representative Gaetz because, quote, the trip itself was more so the payment, end quote. As discussed above, there is evidence that Representative Gaetz paid women to travel to New York and Washington, D.C. for commercial sex. At the time, each of the women was over the age of 18. While Representative Gaetz's relationship with these women involved an exploitative power imbalance, the committee does not have reason to believe that he used force, fraud, or coercion as those terms apply under the applicable laws. 2. The committee found that Representative Gaetz engaged in commercial sex. There is substantial evidence that Representative Gaetz paid women for sex and had others pay women for sex on his behalf. The committee heard testimony from over half a dozen witnesses who attended parties, events, and trips with Representative Gaetz from 2017 to 2020. Nearly every young woman that the committee interviewed confirmed that she was paid for sex by or on behalf of Representative Gaetz. A few of the women characterized their relationship differently, describing a date-for-hire arrangement that may not necessarily implicate state prostitution laws. Even assuming the payments to those particular women would not violate prostitution laws, the committee found evidence that Representative Gaetz spent tens of thousands of dollars on other women with whom he had a shared understanding that they would be compensated for sexual activity with him. There were potentially additional amounts spent on commercial sex that could not be specifically identified either because payments were made in cash or through intermediaries. The committee's record thus indicates that Representative Gaetz enticed and procured women to engage in sexual activity for hire and purchased the services of women engaging in sexual activity for hire in violation of Florida state law. Representative Gaetz refused to answer the committee's questions about his payments to women despite opportunities to do so in sworn testimony or in writing. While he has been unwilling to address the allegations under oath, Representative Gaetz has made several public statements regarding the allegations under the committee's review, including that his generosity to ex-girlfriends is being misconstrued and that he has never, ever paid for sex. The committee found this to be untrue. Members are required to uphold the laws of the United States and all governments therein and never be a party to their evasion. Through his violations of state prostitution laws, Representative Gaetz acted contrary to this ethical obligation. Representative Gaetz took advantage of the economic vulnerability of young women to lure them into sexual activity for which they received an average of a few $100s after each encounter. Such behavior is not generosity to ex-girlfriends, and it does not reflect creditably upon the House. The committee thus found Representative Gaetz to be in violation of House Rule 23, Clause 1. 3. The committee found that Representative Gaetz violated Florida's statutory rape law. There is substantial evidence that Representative Gaetz engaged in sexual activity with a 17-year-old girl. The committee received credible testimony from Victim A herself, as well as multiple individuals corroborating the allegation. Several of those witnesses have also testified under oath before a federal grand jury and in a civil litigation. Representative Gaetz denied the allegation, but refused to testify under oath. He has publicly stated that Victim A doesn't exist and that he has not, quote, had sex with a 17-year-old since I was 17, end quote. The committee found that to be untrue and determined that there is substantial evidence that Representative Gaetz had sex with Victim A in July 2017 when she was 17 years old and he was 35. Representative Gaetz's actions were in violation of Florida's statutory rape law. Representative Gaetz has suggested that the allegations against him have been manufactured and that Mr. Greenberg and Victim A are not credible. The committee has acknowledged that Mr. Greenberg's credibility is in doubt. The committee received additional evidence from Mr. Greenberg that is not included in this report, much of it salacious but unverifiable, although consistent with the nature of the conduct that the committee learned of from other witnesses. The committee found no reason to doubt the credibility of Victim A. Representative Gaetz has suggested the fact that she has, through her attorneys, expressed an intention to seek civil redress against him for raping her means that she has a financial motive that undermines the veracity of her claims. The committee reviewed a letter from counsel to Victim A to counsel for Representative Gaetz, which stated she intended to, quote, pursue claims against Representative Gaetz, including child sex trafficking and statutory rape, end quote. Regardless of whether Victim A had any pecuniary motive in sending such a communication, she cooperated with DOJ's investigation for years and was let down by the justice system when reports circulated that DOJ would be unlikely to pursue charges against Representative Gaetz. Victim A is entitled to all of the protections and remedies available to her under civil laws, and her intention to pursue claims against Representative Gaetz and others does not negate her credibility. Moreover, as discussed above, the committee obtained testimony and documentary evidence from other witnesses corroborating the allegations. Representative Gaetz's statutory rape of Victim A was a violation of Florida law, the Code of Official Conduct, and the Code of Ethics for Government Service. The committee received evidence that Representative Gaetz did not learn that Victim A was 17 years old until more than a month after their first sexual encounters. However, statutory rape is a strict liability crime. After he learned that Victim A was a minor, he maintained contact, and less than 6 months after she turned 18, he met up with her again for commercial sex. When Mr. Greenberg was prosecuted for sex trafficking the same individual, Representative Gaetz denied that she existed. His conduct reflects discreditably upon the House. B. The committee found Representative Gaetz used illegal drugs. There is substantial evidence that Representative Gaetz used cocaine, ecstasy, and marijuana. At least 2 women saw Representative Gaetz using cocaine and ecstasy at different events. Even more women understood him to regularly be using ecstasy. There is also ample evidence that Representative Gaetz purchased and used marijuana. He appears to have set up a pseudonymous email account from his house office in the Capitol complex for the purpose of purchasing marijuana. Representative Gaetz denied using illicit drugs in written correspondence to the committee. Members of Congress are not required to undergo the same background check process as other government officials who obtain a security clearance. That process includes answering questions about use of illegal drugs in the 7 preceding years. Representative Gaetz used illegal drugs on numerous occasions between 2017 and 2020 in violation of state laws. The committee also received evidence that Representative Gaetz and his associates provided drugs to women to facilitate the sexual misconduct described above. Representative Gaetz's conduct violated Paragraph 2 of the Code of Ethics for Government Service and Clause 1 of the Code of Official Conduct. C. The committee found that Representative Gaetz violated the House gift rule. There is substantial evidence that Representative Gaetz received impermissible gifts in connection with his travel to the Bahamas in September 2018. Specifically, Representative Gaetz accepted travel via a private plane and other travel costs. Contrary to Representative Gaetz's claims that he provided substantial evidence to the committee demonstrating his innocence on this allegation, he provided no evidence showing how he paid for any travel costs other than his flight to the Bahamas, despite being given multiple opportunities to do so. As discussed above, Representative Gaetz's associate provided the lodging and return flight via private plane. Representative Gaetz accepted this gift without first seeking approval from the committee. The gift rule requires members to apply to the committee for a waiver to accept gifts of personal friendship with a fair market value over a threshold amount. For travel via private plane, the committee has provided extensive guidance. Less than a year after Representative Gaetz's flight from the Bahamas trip, the committee circulated a reminder about that guidance to the House community, noting that, quote, practically any flight on a non-commercial aircraft will exceed $250 in value and hence will require committee approval, end quote. The flight, lodging, meal, and entertainment expenses on the Bahamas trip that were incurred but not paid by Representative Gaetz were well in excess of the personal friendship threshold. The committee also found evidence that Representative Gaetz impermissibly accepted private plane travel on other occasions. Representative Gaetz failed to disclose the Bahamas travel gift as well as other private flights he has taken on his associates' private planes on his financial disclosure forms. Accordingly, the committee found that Representative Gaetz violated House Rule 25, Clause 5 by accepting impermissible gifts. Consistent with the committee's long-standing precedent, Representative Gaetz would be required to repay the value of the gifts and amend his financial disclosure statements to disclose receipt of the gifts. D. The committee found Representative Gaetz dispensed special privileges and favors to individuals with whom he had a personal relationship. The committee found substantial evidence that Representative Gaetz used the power of his office to assist a woman with whom he was engaged in a sexual relationship in obtaining an expedited passport. The woman was not his constituent, and the case was not handled in the same manner as similar passport assistance cases. Accordingly, the committee found Representative Gaetz violated House regulations and laws requiring the use of official resources for representational purposes, and paragraph 5 of the Code of Ethics for Government Service, which prohibits the dispensing of special favors and privileges. E. The committee found Representative Gaetz sought to obstruct its investigation of his conduct. The committee found substantial evidence that Representative Gaetz engaged in obstructive conduct with respect to the committee's investigation. Representative Gaetz pointed to evidence that would exonerate him, yet failed to produce any such materials. Representative Gaetz continuously sought to deflect, deter, or mislead the committee in order to prevent his actions from being exposed. This was most notable with respect to the committee's specific requests regarding the Bahamas trip. As discussed above, Representative Gaetz intentionally withheld information relating to his return trip via private plane. Representative Gaetz clearly understood that he had acted contrary to House rules by accepting private plane travel, but chose to try to cover up his actions rather than comply with the committee's request. Despite asserting he wanted an opportunity to address the allegations against him, Representative Gaetz declined to provide testimony voluntarily and did not appear when subpoenaed. Representative Gaetz was also provided ample time to review and produce documents requested at various points in the committee's investigation, yet he produced only a handful of non-public documents to the committee. These documents were largely irrelevant, corresponding to time periods after most of the relevant conduct occurred. Likewise, Representative Gaetz informed the committee that he would welcome the opportunity to respond to written questions, and the committee then sent a list of 16 questions. After requesting an extension to respond to written questions, which was granted, it appears that Representative Gaetz used that time to craft a public letter mischaracterizing the committee's requests and asserting that he would no longer voluntarily cooperate despite his uncooperative approach throughout the review. His actions undermine not only his claims that he had exculpatory information to provide, but also his claims that he intended to cooperate with the committee in good faith. It is apparent that Representative Gaetz's assertions were nothing more than attempts to delay the committee's investigation. Representative Gaetz routinely ignored or significantly delayed producing relevant information requested by the committee. His failure to respond required the committee to issue subpoenas to financial institutions for Representative Gaetz's financial records related to alleged transactions. Those records show that Representative Gaetz bought and sold stocks and cryptocurrencies from a trading account he opened in March 2021. Some of the trades were below the $1,000 reporting threshold, but others were not. Representative Gaetz not only failed to file the required periodic transaction reports, but he also failed to disclose the transactions in his annual financial disclosure statement. The committee's long-standing practice is not to take enforcement action where a failure to file required disclosures is inadvertent, but because of his lack of cooperation, the committee was unable to determine the reason the transactions were not disclosed. The committee reminded Representative Gaetz of his duty of diligence and candor to the committee. Representative Gaetz's response was to suggest that the committee had a duty of candor to him and must reveal the confidential sources supporting the allegations against him. The committee's rules prevent such disclosures. Moreover, the committee had serious concerns that Representative Gaetz might retaliate against individuals who cooperated with the committee. In 2020, the committee admonished Representative Gaetz for his conduct towards a witness in a congressional proceeding, finding that he acted in violation of the Code of Official Conduct for a public statement that was perceived by some as a threat toward a witness. In that matter, the committee did not find sufficient evidence to conclude that Representative Gaetz had the requisite criminal intent and noted that he had expressed regret for his conduct. In contrast, in the current matter, there is sufficient evidence of Representative Gaetz's intent to derail the investigation. The committee determined that Representative Gaetz's attempts to mislead and deter the committee from investigating him implicated federal criminal laws relating to false statements and obstruction of Congress. Even if Representative Gaetz's obstructive conduct in this investigation did not rise to the level of a criminal violation, it was certainly inconsistent with the requirement that members act in a manner that reflects creditably upon the House, in violation of House Rule 23, Clause 1. 6. Conclusion. Based on the above, the committee determined there is substantial evidence that Representative Gaetz violated House rules and other standards of conduct prohibiting prostitution, statutory rape, illicit drug use, impermissible gifts, special favors or privileges, and obstruction of Congress. 7. Statement under House Rule 13, Clause 3C. The committee made no special oversight findings in this report. No budget statement is submitted. No funding is authorized by any measure in this report. 7. Views of Chairman Michael Guest on behalf of the dissenting committee members. I write on behalf of the members of the committee who do not support the release of the report regarding former Representative Matt Gaetz. We believe and remain steadfast in the position that the House Committee on Ethics lost jurisdiction to release to the public any substantive work product regarding Mr. Gaetz after his resignation from the House on November 14, 2024. While we do not challenge the committee's findings, we take great exception that the majority deviated from the committee's well-established standards and voted to release a report on an individual no longer under the committee's jurisdiction, an action the committee has not taken since 2006. House rules give the committee jurisdiction over current members, officers, and employees of the House. Consistent with these rules, when a member who is under investigation by the committee leaves the House, the committee's standard practice is to close its investigation and make no further statement on its findings. We do not believe the rules authorize the committee to continue or expand its jurisdiction as it sees fit. Any precedent to the contrary is extremely rare, inconsistent with the rules, and outweighed by the vast majority of matters, too numerous to list, in which the committee took no material action after losing jurisdiction. Representative Gaetz resigned from Congress, withdrew from consideration to serve in the next administration, and declared that he would not seek to be seated in the 119th Congress. The decision to publish a report after his resignation breaks from the committee's long-standing practice, opens the committee to undue criticism, and will be viewed by some as an attempt to weaponize the committee's process. We believe that operating outside the jurisdictional bounds set forth by House rules and committee standards, especially when making public disclosures, is a dangerous departure with potentially catastrophic consequences. Finally, we join the views of the committee as expressed in its December 23, 2024 public statement addressing the significant and unusual amount of public reporting on the committee's review of this matter. As expressed by the committee, quote, to the extent that any of the public reporting on this matter came from unauthorized disclosures of confidential committee information, we strongly condemn such unauthorized disclosures which are damaging and harmful to the committee's work. End quote. This concludes this episode of The Docket. I hope you enjoyed this episode. For updates on The Docket, please visit DocketPod.com or find us on Threads as DocketPod. If you found this useful or interesting, please consider subscribing to The Docket and supporting my Patreon at patreon.com/DocketPod. Thank you.